Eileen's police interview. This is the third video I upload. It's probably best if you haven't watched or listened to the first two videos about the letter of Marjolein and the two affidavits of Feliciano to start with those, and this is the third one. So Eileen Witek gave a sworn statement to officials on April 7th of 2014 at noon. This was done in Alto Boquete at the Spanish by the River Language School and in the presence of Ingrid Lommers, who served as translator. Eileen was asked if she knew the young women Chris Kramers and Lisanne Vroon and whether she was a friend, enemy or family member of them. To this Eileen only answered yes, and that she had met them in Bocos de Toro 3 weeks ago. She confirmed that they stayed in Boquete with a local family. Eileen was then asked if Chris and Lisanne ever told her if they had the intention of taking a tourist trip in the Boquete region, and if so, to what place and with whom. Eileen again answered through Ingrid. She says no, nor did they ask her about any place. When asked if Chris and Lisanne asked Eileen to find them a tour guide, Eileen gave a peculiar answer. She says no. But then Ingrid continued to state that Eileen called Feliciano Gonzalez to do a tour for another day, Wednesday, April 2nd, to the Las Princesas farm, for which the girls did not show up, but that Eileen does not know where this farm is. When Eileen was asked whether or not Chris and Lisanne ever told her if they had contacted another guide to go on an excursion with, she answered with no. By the same day, and by Wednesday the 2nd, Mr. Feliciano had been contacted or had contacted us for a tour. I add the literal text in Spanish, Panamanian Spanish of course, for those who understand it better than me perhaps. She again denied with a one-worded no the question if Chris and Lisanne had ever mentioned to her that they were experiencing any problems. Just like she answered with a simple no when asked if during the time she stayed in this place any person visited her or called her that she told her about. I again add the literal Spanish text because it's very difficult to completely correctly translate it for me as I don't speak Spanish, but you have the original line. When asked if Chris and Lisanne carried a large amount of money with them, to her knowledge, Eileen replied, only what is necessary. And when asked if she had anything else to add or report, Eileen replied, that is all. So that was a very short interview. I'll add some thoughts and commentary now. So Eileen was asked on April 7th, please tell me if the young women Lisanne and Chris ever told you if they had the intention of taking a tourist trip in the Boquete region, and if so, to what place and with whom. To which Ingrid replied on Eileen's behalf, translating her Dutch answer. She says no, nor did they ask her about any place. So this reads a bit strange. This is basically Eileen denying that Chris and Lisanne were the ones who asked for the Wednesday farm tour. This was said by her very early on also, with fresh memory, so that's what it reads like. Maybe she meant it differently. But if we are to take her 100% seriously here, and literally I guess, this sworn statement of hers blows a big hole in the whole story of that trip to a farm, sometimes called a coffee tour, then again a strawberry tour. This statement by Eileen so early in the investigation is so important then. If Chris and Lisanne did not ask her for tours in the surroundings, what the hell was this strawberry farm about? Did Eileen simply not know what the tour would be? Was that tour even arranged at all, or just invented later on by Eileen and Feliciano? Is this then a case of her and Feliciano not having completely fine-tuned that narrative? I mean, I'm just speculating here, but it is a strange answer given the timeline that has been created by everyone. And this is of course just one theory, automatically making me wonder why Eileen would go along with such a nonsense story if it wasn't true. Unless she was complicit in something or pressurized into it, with him needing a confirmed tour booking perhaps, with Chris and Lisanne giving him authority to go looking for them and invading their private bedroom. But I'm straying very far from her statement now. Maybe she just got lost in translation, maybe she didn't fully understand the question. In any case, both have been changing their story over time, indicating that neither of them are necessarily trustworthy people or witnesses here. But nevertheless, Eileen stated here under oath in a serious and official interview that Chris and Lisanne did not inform nor ask her about any tours in the Buketa region, so that would include this mythical strawberry farm. Eileen was also asked on April 7th, please tell me if the aforementioned young women asked you to find them a tour guide, to which Ingrid replied on Eileen's behalf. She says no. She says that she called Feliciano Gonzalez to do a tour for another day, which was Wednesday, April 2nd, and they met with Mr. Feliciano here at 8 in the morning, and that day they never arrived, and it was for the Las Princesas farm, and she does not know where it is. So does this mean that Chris and Lisanne also never asked Eileen to book them a tour with Feliciano? Did Eileen book this out of her own initiative then? I thought that Feliciano indicated in his own affidavit that Eileen discussed it with Chris and Lisanne and agreed upon said tour with the three of them, and that's when Eileen called Feliciano again to confirm this. So Eileen denied that the two ever asked her to find a tour guide for them, and that she booked a tour with Feliciano for some reason out of the blue to a place she had no idea where it was for all three of them. What exactly was she planning to do here? Leave the school unattended and empty for half a day out of her own initiative? So why did she call Feliciano then, and on whose behalf? Why is there no follow-up question from police about this inconsistent answer from Eileen? She's answering under oath, but skips the Baru booking, which she reportedly booked for Chris and Lisanne the day before, according to Lost in the Jungle, so what else is she not mentioning here? Quote, and it was for the Las Princesas farm and she does not know where it is, end quote. So she knows the farm's name, but not much else. No basic research before signing herself up for this tour. Well, Chris and Lisanne didn't even have the intention, or so Eileen says, to make a tourist trip in the Buketa region, nor did they ask Eileen to find them a tour guide. So why did Eileen call Feliciano on Tuesday then, to arrange a tour for the three of them, to a farm she knows close to nothing about seemingly? Surely that had been discussed among the three of them prior? But Eileen mentioned none of this in her affidavit. Just like she skips the subject of Feliciano having admitted to having been at Spanish by the River on Tuesday morning, which by the sound of his sworn statements played into this supposed farm tour request later on, after he had left over the phone with him in David in hospital, remember? Police could have pressed her a bit on that subject perhaps, and with Eileen all there is this very brief questionnaire on the Monday, taken in Spanish by the River, with Ingrid as a translator there, while he is elsewhere that morning, at the governor's office giving a detailed statement, doing the talking, while Eileen is seemingly avoiding saying anything really. It's very strange. So Eileen was asked on April 7th, state if the young women mentioned that they were experiencing any problems, to which Ingrid replied on Eileen's behalf. She says no. So technically Chris and Lisanne were experiencing problems though. Eileen knew about their promised and pre-agreed work placement having fallen through, and how many practical problems this has created basically for herself, for Marjolein, for these Dutch girls. It's documented in their diaries and through communication with their parents, and Eileen was fairly stressed herself, in fact, about finding them replacement work. Or maybe German Eileen has a different definition of problems, or is this more a case here of Eileen avoiding to answer the question to full honesty, given that it would make school owner Ingrid, present as an interpreter, perhaps look bad? I'm just guessing. Eileen was also asked on April 7th, please tell us if during the time you stayed in this place any person visited you or called you that you told him/her about. And she says no one. So maybe someone from Panama can give me a better translation of that question. I'll add it here in Spanish, as I'm not entirely sure what they're asking her exactly here. But maybe they mean whether anyone ever visited Eileen at the school to ask her about Chris and Lisanne, or maybe they're asking whether any other person or persons you may have told us about previously visited you at the school or the hostel you're staying at. They probably want to know if people came looking for the girls at the school, and she says no, omitting here Feliciano's visit to the school on Tuesday, again. Eileen was also asked on April 7, state if you know that the young women carried a large amount of money with them, to which Ingrid replied on Eileen's behalf. She says only what is necessary. So, necessary for what? What warrants to bring $88 roughly into the jungle? Why is there no follow-up question or explanation of this? What is necessary? Did they have other plans perhaps for that day that Eileen knew of? Why is nobody pressuring Eileen to elaborate here? It's just an answer that doesn't provide a lot of new details. So why ask that question if you're not willing to ask a follow-up question? It's just my impression. Basically, what sort of sworn statement interview is this? I long thought that Eileen was never questioned by police at all before leaving Boquete, seemingly in a hurry. So a slip triumphantly wrote that she was in fact questioned by police, but after having access to this, you can barely call this a questioning, I guess. Eileen was only asked 8 simple questions. We're talking about a key witness here, and I realize that people can sometimes read too much into such statements, but this is both from the investigators and from Eileen absolutely bare minimum of investment and effort, or so it seems to me. No wonder that people are saying that something stinks in this case. So the declarant is asked if she has anything else to say, add or correct this proceeding, and Eileen's answer is, that is all. So notice how a vital piece of information is also not provided here by Eileen, whether or not she was aware of their pianista hike plans for that Tuesday afternoon. We have since been told by some authors and by Feliciano that it was Eileen who knew about those plans and who overheard them and who told Feliciano this. They're all using Eileen as an alibi, basically, for Feliciano, but even when asked if she has anything else to add, she says no. She's either a useless witness or was somehow inclined to say as little as possible. According to Feliciano, Eileen had initially casually told him that she could imagine that Chris and Lisanne had walked the Pianista Trail, as she had lived in Holland for a while and studied tourism there, so she could understand Dutch, and the previous morning she had heard the girls talking about the trail and searching for information on the school computer. So, if that is true, why doesn't Eileen say such a vital thing to police in her sworn statement at a critical time? But the Dutch Lost in the Jungle authors published that they spoke with Eileen, and to them she declared in 2020 that she had no idea, in fact, that Chris and Lisanne had gone up the Pianista before disappearing. And then 4 years later, Eileen did a U-turn again and told the Slip authors, according to them, that she did overheard Chris and Lisanne about this plan and did tell Feliciano about it. How many times is she going to change her story? I mean, honestly, which version is true? She says something different to Canadian sleuths also. It's just constantly quicksand. So, a couple more observations, because this is only a very short statement. So reading this statement, I couldn't help but wonder, is Eileen naturally quiet or shy perhaps? Was she a serious employee or a fair weather one? Was she dutiful or maybe immature? Was she impressionable or very confident? We just don't know what her personality and character are like. So she's also a bit of a ghost in some ways, quite sketchy outlined only, and this super restrained and sworn statement of hers does not exactly help in lifting that veil. Overall, I get the impression that Ingrid barely knew Eileen. She encountered her in Bocas in late March and must have taught her a few ropes there, and then was happy to delegate Boquete to her, because Ingrid was touring with a larger group past all the locations of the school, which was an expensive tour, so it brought Ingrid a lot of income, and perhaps this was given priority over Spanish by the River, which has barely any language students present at the time, just Chris and Lisanne and apparently this Petra from Liechtenstein, from what we now know. Also glaringly missing from this absolutely bare minimum of a sworn statement from Eileen, and a major cliffhanger by now, is why did Eileen declare that she saw Chris and Lisanne leaving Spanish by the River by 1 p.m. on Tuesday? Nobody other than us sleuths seem interested in clearing this discrepancy. At this point in time, the most logical explanation for me is that Feliciano told Eileen to say this to cover up that he himself saw Chris and Lisanne at the school that Tuesday morning, and something was said or happened there that cannot be known, or in fact he first told investigators in his initial sworn statement, only to ignore it later on and even deny it in the press by 2019. But perhaps there's another more mundane explanation for this piece of misinformation. It did play a big role in the start of the investigation because a lot of witnesses were not believed because investigators stuck to the 1 p.m. last sighting by Eileen at the school, which was completely off. So everything that happened hinges on what went on that Tuesday morning and when Chris and Lisanne found out that they had no work for that week. As Dave M stated, was it really their own idea to head off out of town to the remoteness of the Pianista, or were they nudged into it? I mean, your mind goes in all directions, and I know that is conspiracy theory territory, but I think that even the staunchest defenders of these people have to admit that there are a lot of inconsistencies in these very early statements, such as Eileen being very clear to the Lost in the Jungle authors that she never told anyone that Chris and Lisanne were going to walk the Pianista. She didn't even know. So why doesn't Eileen keep a straight story about this overhearing of Chris and Lisanne and their Pianista plans, according to Sinaproc in a Miriam Affidavit document, which is covered in my blog. Later, we went to the Spanish by the River school with telephone number X, since this is where the young women were last seen, according to the information we have. The young Eileen Wietek, a German national, tells us that at about 1 in the afternoon, the girls were looking for information according to the computer history they used on the Pianista path. So she told Sinaproc right in the beginning of the disappearance that these girls were still at the school by 1 p.m. on Tuesday. How could she be mistaken when it happened mere days ago at that point in time? So by April 3rd, so with her memory very, very fresh still, Eileen informed Sinaproc that the two were searching the net for the Pianista path at about 1 p.m. She told Ingrid also that she saw them leaving the school just shortly after 1 p.m. And Ingrid told this on the national news at the time. So Eileen informed Sinaproc that time of day was incorrect, a lie some would say. But to the Lost in the Jungle authors, Eileen said in 2020 that she didn't see Chris and Lisanne for the last time at 1 p.m. after all, but at 1 p.m. on Monday in fact, something she also said to the 2 Canadian sleuths who contacted her, which is also impossible, as they were at Aura at that time, and Eileen must have seen the girls on Tuesday morning in fact anyway, which was confirmed by Marjolein in her letter. Unfortunately, this makes Eileen also a bit of a poisoned witness, because she keeps changing her story. But we cannot ignore that Eileen was very clear to the Lost in the Jungle authors that she never told anyone that Chris and Lisanne were going to walk the Pianista Trail, so the Dutch authors claim that Feliciano knew about the Pianista Trail from Ingrid Lommers, who has denied knowing about this as she wasn't even in Boquete at the time. So that's it. A lot of open endings, open questions. It's up to you to decide what you think about these sworn statements. You may have different opinions than I do, which is very fine. On my blog, I also cover the affidavits of Miriam Guerra, of Mr. Angel Palacio Sanchez, Mr. Lorenzo Montezuma, and Mr. Luciano Bejarano Rodriguez. And I also cover a police interview with Martijn Vroon and a summary of the transcript of the eyewitness inspection proceedings of both the bedroom of Chris and Lisanne and the location where the boot of Lisanne and later the jean shorts of Chris were found. I won't make separate videos about that information, but you are very free to read about it on my blog, KoudeKaas, link is below the video. So thanks for listening and for reading, as always.